I said in a book that I wrote many years ago called Gifts from Icus, there is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. You're not going to find it in something outside of you. It is, and it's like when you understand this and get this, connecting to intention means something that's very powerful to you. There's an observation that I came across in the writing of The Power of Intention by a man who gave a lecture, I'm not sure the exact year, but it was in the early 1900s. His name was Thomas Troward. And he gave a series of lectures on mental science at Edinburgh in Scotland. It's called the Edinburgh and Dorey Lectures. And one of those observations, one of those quotations was this. I really love this. He said, "The law of flotation was not discovered by the contemplation of the sinking of things." Agree? Agree? Imagine yourself figure out, what he made an observation that before about the 15th or 16th centuries, all of the ships in the world were made out of wood. And why do you think they made ships out of wood for so many centuries? Because when you put wood in water, what happens? It floats. And our conclusion was, the law of flotation must be, you want things to float, make them out of things that float. But now we have realized that in studying the law of flotation, that it has nothing to do with what the material is made out. It has to do with the amount of water that is being displaced. So now all the ships of the world are made out of stuff that doesn't float, and yet they float. We're celebrating now at this time in our history the 100-year anniversary of Orville and Wilbur Wright over in Dayton, Ohio. Imagine the law of flight being discovered by two brothers contemplating the staying on the ground of things. So what we want to do is figure out a way to reconnect ourselves to surrounding ourselves with this idea that we are already connected to everything that we need for everything in our life. We've just separated ourselves by believing that we're something that we're not. In a book that I wrote a few years back called 10 Secrets for Success and Inner Peace, which was part of a PBS special, one of those secrets is called Treasuring Your Divinity. Treasuring Your Divinity. And I came across this observation, and I was writing some notes on what I'm just talking about, on contemplating things. Listen to these words. We know that by the very nature of the creative process, which is what intention is about, learning to create the life that you want, the world that you want, the people that you want, the excitement that you want, the health that you want, everything. We know that by the very nature of the creative process that we are one with this originating spirit. And therefore, we are also one with all of its principles. Whatever this is like, whatever it sounds like, whatever it thinks like, whatever it looks like, we are one with it. And consequently, we are one with its infinite personality. We are not here as human beings having spiritual experiences. We are all spiritual beings having human experiences. All of us. We are all infinite. And therefore, our contemplation of this source, as the power which we want, gives us the ability to use that power. And the way that we use this process is to contemplate ourselves as surrounded by the conditions which we want to produce. Keep that in mind. Underline that. Surround yourself internally with the conditions, contemplate them, which you want to produce. What is it you want to produce in your life? What do you intend to create for yourself? It's not your ego that's going to do it. It's your free will to reconnect to this, which is the source of everything. You're going to be, by the end of this program, you're going to be in rapport with, in harmony with this. If you call my cell phone, pick up the phone, I'm not going to give that number, but if you were to call this number, this is what you would get as a message from me. Hi, this is Wayne Dyer that you've reached, and I want to feel good. If your call is designed to do anything other than that, you have reached the wrong number. And I urge you to call Dr. Phil. But feeling good is perhaps the most important thing I can talk to you about here in cleaning up this link. If you open up the Torah, this ancient spiritual text, the Old Testament, and go to the very opening lines, Genesis 1:1, it says, what? In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. Pretty simple. God is infinite. Out of this source came all the material worlds. And then if you read down 31 lines later, it says, and all that God created was good. So good and God are synonymous, aren't they? Good and God, just an O, just one extra O. So that when you say, I want to feel good, as you'll see as this program unfolds, you're really saying, in a way, I want to feel God. I want to feel whatever this beautiful source of all, this divine mind, this source of all things, I want to feel what it feels. Now you might say to yourself, yeah, it's easy to say I want to feel good, but how can I feel good when so much around me is bad? How can I feel good if my sister-in-law has cancer? And how can I feel good if I know that over on the other side of this planet there are people who are starving to death? And how can I feel good if there are people who are poor and I have money, and there are people who are starving? And how can I feel good when my children act in the way that they act? Or how can I feel good? And I suggest to you that when you say I want to feel good, what you're saying is I want to feel God. I want to feel this. I want to connect here. And I want to offer this to you as a very important and powerful piece of advice that came to me years ago. You cannot get sick enough to heal one person on this planet. And you cannot get poor enough to make one person wealthy on this planet. And you cannot get confused enough to unconfuse one person on this planet. No amount of your feeling bad, when you say feeling bad, what you do is you lose your connection to Source. And when you lose your connection to Source, what happens is you create something called resistance. I can't do this. It's not possible. I can't do this. It's not possible. I don't deserve that I can do. And when you create this kind of resistance, you have emotions. And these emotions become sadness, fear, worry, anxiety. And what I'd like to offer you is a way for you to use these emotions that you are experiencing at any time in your life and use them as a system, as a barometer, as a guidance system to say to yourself, what kinds of thoughts am I having that are keeping me from being in rapport with this field of intention? And at any moment that you're not feeling good, you are attracting exactly the opposite of what it is that you would like to attract into your life. You are using this as a way to keep yourself from feeling God or feeling good. If you are listening to the news, and the news is filled with all of the reasons why you should be depressed, and it's not an accident that then they are sponsored by all of the reasons why you should take these narcotics or these pills or whatever it is in order to get over. So here's some depression, and wait a minute, we'll be right back. Here's a way out of it, okay? I saw a commercial the other day. I don't even know what it was for. Some guy gets up in the morning, and he's going out to get clams. And he's going out clamming in the morning, and he's successful at getting the clams. He walks off, and he's got his clams. And I think, and then they say, call your doctor to see if you need some of this clam-finding miracle drug. There's a drug out there that'll help you find clams if this happens to be one of your problems. All right? And there's something out there, and now we're being told to call our doctors. Do I need the orange pill, the green pill, the purple pill? Do I need this one? I saw so-and-so reading it, and she was skating on the ice, and I want to skate on the ice. And it's like it's an endless progression of this. It's one of the reasons that I put so much of my energy into public television. Because when I watch the evening news, when I watch Jim Lehrer on the evening news on PBS, which is the only news that I watch, I don't get bombarded with all of the reasons why, and I also get sort of either side of this thing. I don't just get a one-sided view of it. And it's like, it's an energy system. I'd like to say to you here that my idea about connecting to intention has certain obstacles to getting there. And I just want to very briefly go through what those obstacles are and then move into what it is that you need to do to understand what this field looks like and what you can do to stay connected to it. Keeping in mind these words, I want to feel good. I know my beautiful daughter, who will be singing in a little while, Sky, she was working on a music project. And she had come to me and she said, when she was going to school at the University of Miami, and she said, Dad, would you mind if I dropped out of school? And since I have been a person who has never ever listened to any advice that adults ever gave me throughout my life about what I should do with my life, because I believe it's something that you have to own yourself, I said, why? And she said, well, I want to sing. I've always just wanted to sing. It's the only thing that's in my heart is singing. And what I've discovered, she said, is that I can't sit in classrooms anymore in my junior year and be told how to sing by people who are not singing. And she said, I also don't want to study theory any longer. I want to sing. I just feel it in my heart. I said, that's great. I said, I'd like to take you with me when I talk all over the country, all over the world. And I'd like you to sing for me, because I'm always so proud to have her on stage with me, as you'll see why shortly. And I said to her, I said, honey, but what you got to do is perhaps, put together a project, perhaps put together a CD, get some way that you can come out and sing at the talks and include on this some of the music that is relevant to what I speak about. And she said, okay. And I was over on Maui and I was writing. And she called me, she said, Dad, the problem is that the musicians that I need to be able to do this are not available. And you can't get them. And I said, Sky, you've got to contemplate yourself as surrounded, wish to produce. Don't think about the musicians as not being available. Contemplate yourself surrounded by the musicians, and you'll see that when you reconnect to this source will provide. It always does. It's an unfailing system. It's fail-safe. She said, all right, Dad the dork, you know. She called me back the next day. She said, you're not going to believe this, Dad. I did what you said last night, and all the musicians are available. I just can't believe it. She said, they called the ones that I wanted, especially they had a cancellation on something. She said, the only problem is that the studios that I need in order to be able to record it are unavailable. There's no studios available in any place in South Florida, and I want to get this in, and I had given her a deadline of like 4 days to get this done, an entire CD. So she called me back and she said, how do I get a studio? I said, Sky, contemplate yourself as surrounded by the conditions which you wish to produce. The law of flotation was not discovered. All right, I got it with the flotation, okay? She called me back the next morning. She said, Dad, it's a miracle. She said, the studios had a cancellation, and the studio that I really need and the musicians, they're all available. I can put the whole thing together. It's so exciting. This stuff really works. I said, of course it does. She said, the only problem is that it costs quite a bit of money to pay these musicians and have the studio time. I said, Sky, honey, you've got to contemplate yourself as surrounded by the conditions which you want to produce. She said, that's why I'm calling you. And I said, but honey, I want to feel good. She said, maybe you should call Dr. Phil. She said, and this will make you feel good, because you will be contemplating yourself as surrounded by a daughter who is so... She used it all right back on me. And she did it, and she got it done, and she was able to produce it. And, you know, it sounds like a silly little example, but it's like the obstacles that we have to creating what we want very often are in the ways that we perceive ourselves as disconnected here. And every thought that you have that says, I can't do it, is resistance to connecting to Source. And every thought that you have that says, it's never worked before, that's resistance to connecting to this Source, to what's being, what I call vibrating to Source energy, getting back to having your desires, what you want to create in vibrational harmony with this highest energy in the universe. The obstacles that we have, most of us are, there's three of them. The major one is the ego, which I talked about earlier. You have to learn to stop being offended. There are people out there who are going through life looking for occasions to be offended, and you very seldom will find yourself disappointed. In 3 weeks, it'll be a month. What kind of thinking is that? I was changing plane in Dallas one time, and there was about 8 minutes to go before I had to make a connection, and the woman next to me, she said, I said, I'd really appreciate if I could just step in front of you because I'm going to make my connection. She said, you're going to have to change trains and get to another terminal. She said, there's no way that you can make your connection. She's still in Dallas. I think from the end, I see myself as already connected to that which I want to attract into my life. And if it doesn't work out for some reason, I don't use blame, I don't get anger, I just simply say to myself, this is the way it is supposed to be. And I'm at peace with it. I choose to be at peace because this is peace. You want to watch the resistance. What kind of self-talk do we have? If you think about what is missing in your life, and you talk to other people about what is missing in your life, and you share a lot with what's missing in your life. I'm missing the right person. My soulmate has never showed up, you know. I'm missing the money. I don't have the money. And you talk about all the things that are missing in your life. Here's your connection to Source. Remember, you're always connected. The question is, are you ready to stop living at ordinary levels of consciousness? Are you willing to live at a spiritual level of consciousness in which you are in rapport with that which provides everything? So if you're thinking about what's missing and you go to this universal Source asking to have fixed what is missing in your life, you'll have your belief in what's missing continue to be refocused for you. In the Old Testament it says, as a man thinketh, so is he. If you think about what is missing, don't be surprised if you keep attracting what's missing into your life. If you think about what always has been, then don't be surprised if what always has been is what keeps showing up in your life. Because thoughts are energy. And the thought of it's always been this way and there's nothing I can do, resistance. What emotion am I feeling? Frustration. I want to change that. What is my guidance system? I'm going to see how in harmony am I with the energy of intention. How in harmony with it am I? The Source of all doesn't know anything about things being missing. There's nothing missing in this universal Source. And you emanated from that. You are a piece of that. If you're always thinking about what they want for you, and there's no shortage of them, they're called relatives. I'm going to write a book someday that's going to be called Your Friends Are God's Way of Apologizing for Your Relatives. Why? Because, by the way, I gave this same talk to your relatives and they heard it even louder. Okay? Because a friend is someone before whom you can think aloud. A friend is not someone who makes demands on you and tells you what you should be doing or what you shouldn't be doing. There are very often, because we believe that we're related to people, we have talk, and then what happens with us is that we start talking to other people about what they want for us. And we despise what they want for us. We get angry at them for even wanting that for us, and then we get surprised when what they want for us keeps showing up. See, self-actualizing people, Abraham Maslow once said, the difference between self-actualizing people, the highest functioning people, and everybody else is that self-actualizing people must be what they can be. Self-actualizing people must be what they can be. What can you be? What can you be? And I'd like to suggest to you that if you look, I'm going to take a pair of magical binoculars now. And I'm going to take these binoculars, and I'm just going to assume that I am now looking through these magical binoculars at my source, where I came from. The question I ask at the very beginning, where did I come from? The answer to that is, I came from a field of energy, and a particle was formed out of that field that became everything I needed for this physical journey. My birth and my death were all in there. My height, the color of my skin, the hair falling out, all of the things that are taking place in this physical body were all handled there. But they were also handled before that source hit the world of material. And when I shift and understand that what I came from, what I'm looking for here, I'm looking to see, what does it look like? What does this look like? I call these in the book, in The Power of Intention, I call them the faces of intention. The 7 faces of intention. And any time in your life when you are not in harmony with these 7 faces, you are stopping the miraculousness, the miracle, the mystical mystery that you are, that not only decided the shape of your eye before it became a particle, but decided the shape of your life as well. You came here from a field of energy that has no limits. The first of these 7 faces is called the face of creativity, or creation. And I suggest to you that there's an intention, and intention is one of the chapters here. It is my intention to live my life on purpose. Here is the source. So beautiful. This is where I emanated from. And this source is always creating. And you, as a being who has emanated from that but has taken on an ego, has what I call summoning power or pulling power. You can pull from this source and be what it is, or you can have resistance to it. How much summoning power do you have? How much of this source are you able to summon? When you are on purpose in your life, one of the great teachers in my life was a man named Patanjali. And he had an observation about being in spirit. The word in spirit creates a word called inspire. And Patanjali put it this way. He said, when you are inspired, in spirit, when you are inspired by some great purpose, some extraordinary project, all of your thoughts break their bonds. Your mind transcends limitations. Your consciousness expands in every direction, and you find yourself in a new and a great and a wonderful world. And then he said something so powerful. He said, dormant forces, like forces that you didn't think were accessible to you, dormant forces, faculties, and talents come alive. And you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. Those words bring tears to my eyes. They're so powerful. When you are inspired, when you are in spirit. When you're in spirit, you are creating. When you are creating, everything is working. My teacher in India one time, Nisargadatta Maharaj, said, when he was asked the question, there's wars going on in Pakistan, there's people having difficulties here, there's people dying, there's starvation. How can you say that I can heal myself, and how can you be at peace when you see all of this going around? And you know what he said to his devotee? He said, in my world, nothing ever goes wrong. What a powerful idea that is. You can't get sick enough to heal those people who are sick around you. You can't get poor enough to take care of the lack of abundance in so many people's lives. The only thing you can do to help that, as I'll be talking about a little later, is to connect to this. You know, when I was 19 years old, I joined the Navy right after high school in 1958. And I was going overseas to connect to my ship after having gone to school. And I was standing at the dock boarding a ship called the USS Vega, which is a refrigerator ship, which was taking me across the Pacific Ocean in 29 days to meet the USS Ranger, an aircraft carrier, at that time the largest ship in the world, and I was assigned to it. And it was docked in a place called Yokosuka, Japan. And I took a boat, this refrigerator boat, over to Sasebo in southern Japan, got on a train, 19 years old, and was going to catch my boat 29 days later. 19-year-old kid. And as I got on the boat, never having been on such an adventure before, my Uncle Bill, who was a school teacher in Hayward, California, one of my heroes, one of the reasons why I'm here today is because of my Uncle Bill Volley, he handed me a book. And it was a collection of short stories by a man named Leo Tolstoy. He said to me, as he handed it to me, he said, read The Death of Ivan Ilyich by Leo Tolstoy. And The Death of Ivan Ilyich is a story of a man very quickly who was a judge in Moscow. And he went back and forth every day to work, and he hated his work. And he hated everything about what he was doing, and yet he still pursued it. And he got to the end of his life, and he was lying on his deathbed, and he looked up at his wife, who was holding his hands, and he looked into her eyes. And I was 19 when I read this, and it still gives me gooseflesh. He said to her as he died, "What if my whole life has been wrong?" And I took out a pad of paper, and I wrote down my first of my 10 secrets for success in Interpace. And I started a journal at that time, and it said, "Dear Wayne, don't die with your music still in you. Don't die with your music still in you." I would suggest to you, if you are not creating, and if you wonder what your purpose is, and so many people wonder, what is my purpose? And they talk about, I don't know what my purpose is. You know what that is? Your thoughts about your purpose are your purpose trying to reconnect to you. Like if you want to quit smoking, and people say, oh, it's such a hard thing to do. Well, of course, that's resistance. And then, you know, who wants to do hard things when easy things like smoking are available? But if you, and people say, well, I've been thinking about it. I said, keep thinking about it. Just keep thinking. You want to lose weight? Keep thinking about it. Put your attention on it. Surround yourself with those kind of thoughts, because the thinking about it process is a part of your connecting to it. Eventually, you will connect to it and you will begin to act upon what those thoughts are. But you got to start by thinking about it. And the ultimate purpose you can have in your life, I used to have a jacket that I hung on my closet door. And the jacket had all of the pockets ripped off. I took a razor blade to all the pockets. Because someone had once said to me that the last jacket you wear doesn't need any pockets. So, because you're not taking anything with you in your pockets, all right? So every time I'd walk into my closet and I'd look at this tattered jacket with no pockets in it, it was a reminder, you're going to have to wear a jacket someday that doesn't need any pockets, all right? And so what do you do with your life? Your life is like a parenthesis in eternity. You show up from an infinite source. You materialize. You're a particle. Everything you needed for this life is in it. And then you close parentheses. What can you do with your life? You can't take anything with you. You came from nowhere. N-O-W-H-E-R-E. You show up in now here. N-O-W-H-E-R-E. It's all the same. Just a question of little spacing. And where do you think you're going? Back to... You ain't going nowhere. You're going nowhere. From nowhere to now here to nowhere, it's all the same. The only thing you can do with your life is give it away. When people say to me, what is it that I can do with my life? What is my purpose? My answer is always the same. Find a way to be of service. Find a way, whatever it is. Doesn't matter if you're serving ice cream cones in Alaska. It doesn't matter if you're raising horses in Montana. It doesn't make any difference. I had a woman come to me one time who wanted to adopt a child in Moldova. I had to look it up. Moldova. She saw this little face on a program on one of the stations there. I think it was on a PBS station. And she couldn't get that face out of her mind. She became on purpose. She began to live her life on purpose. She went to Moldova and brought home her little son. And it's like, whatever it is, when you are of service, if you're giving your life away, and if you don't know how to do that, you suspend your ego. You understand that living on purpose means there's no accidents. That you're aligning yourself with purpose. You ignore other people when they tell you what you should be doing. That's what Ivan Illich didn't do. You just ignore it. You don't have to have a fight about it. You can say, thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. It's very helpful. I've never thought of that before. I'll consider that. That's how you handle all conflict. Can I join up with this source energy or can't I? As soon as you start striking out, you're off of purpose. You have to contemplate yourself surrounded by the conditions you want to produce. That's the first phase of intention. The second face of intention is one of my absolute favorites. I call it the face of kindness. It is my intention to be at peace with everyone in my life, including all of my relatives. That's my intention. I insist that I will be at that place in my life. And so how do you do that? You have to, again, look at the resistance, look at the thoughts, and suggest to yourself, I am going to be kindness. Yesterday, we went to a movie. I came home from the movie, and there was a man on the street in Boston who was homeless. And he was mentally challenged, obviously. And he had a little cup, and he asked for some change. And I looked at him, and I always send a sort of a silent blessing to these people. And then I was walking, and I kept thinking, you're giving a talk tomorrow about kindness. And I went back, and I had about $4 worth of change in my pocket, and I had to chase him. He went downstairs someplace, and he was dirty, and he was, and he couldn't speak right, and I took this change, and I just took his cup and I put it, and you'd have thought that I had given this man, $1 million. I mean, he followed me. He couldn't stop thanking. Tears were coming down. It's a simple little act of kindness. And I'm not suggesting to every single one of you that everybody who asks you for money, you are obliged to give them money. But can you give them a silent blessing? Can you give them a smile instead of using them as a reason to be upset? And you have to, folks, you got to do this with all of your relatives as well, particularly your own children and your own parents. You got to look at them and see every time that I have a thought that is not one of kindness, what I am doing is I am leaving the source and taking on ego consciousness. Here's a fascinating piece of research. You know what serotonin is? Serotonin is like this neurotransmitter, this enzyme in the body, in the brain. And the more of it that you have, the better you feel. It's the well-being feeling. And this well-being feeling is something that antidepressants are designed to stimulate. So that when you take these names that have become common out there, we associate this with, they are designed to stimulate the production of serotonin. Serotonin is very difficult to measure. It's done through the metabolites in the urine, but they're getting better at measuring it. Here's a fascinating study that was just completed. That any person who is the recipient of an act of kindness has their serotonin levels increased just because they received an act of kindness. And their immune system is strengthened because they received this dose of kindness. That's the recipient. And secondly, any person who is the giver, the provider of an act of kindness, anything you ever do which is providing an act of kindness, and see, here's a universal source that can't be anything other than what it is. It can't be something foreign to itself. So it's always creating, it is always creating what it creates, treating it with kindness. Here, this source can create worlds. It creates It creates planets and systems. And whether you look through the microscope or whether you look through the telescope, it's impossible to say which has the grander view. It's impossible to say because they all lead to infinity. And this is a source that creates worlds. It creates you. It doesn't, why would it create? It can create anything. Why would it create stuff that it's not kindly toward? Like avocados? No thanks. I don't want an avocado. Why would it do that? It doesn't have to. It can create anything, this source, from which all emanates. If you are the provider of an act of kindness towards anyone, but particularly towards the people that you're close to in your life, and particularly towards strangers with just a smile, or an act of kindness, or, you know, I can afford a quarter, I can afford $1, I'm going to go back. And just, you know, and not making a big deal about it, the serotonin levels in you are increased to the same degree that they are in the receiver. And so is your immune system strengthened. You want to strengthen your immune system? Be kind. But even more dramatic than that, I get excited about this. Because this is what blows me away about it, is that the observer of an act of kindness, has their serotonin levels and their immune system strengthened just because they're in the energy field of someone who is displaying kindness. When you see someone being kind to another person, it's like a dose of an antidepressant. It's like a serotonin rush. Very often in my talks, and I'll ask, who is the person out there in the audience who had someone buy your ticket because you couldn't afford it? And you couldn't afford to come here, and they paid your way to get here. And they just wanted you to be here because they felt it was so important that you be there. And someone will always raise their hand, I'll bring them up, and I'll say, so what did they spend? And they'll say, $100. They gave me $100, and they couldn't even afford it themselves. And I'll reach in my pocket, and I'll hand her the $100. And I'll say, could I extend to you this kindness back so that you can repay that person? And everyone, you can see teeth that you couldn't see for the previous hour. Everybody is smiling and laughing and happy and excited. And it cost me $100. You know how much antidepressant you'd have to take? That's $10,000 worth of pills. And you got to call your doctor. Do I need the purple one? Every act of kindness. Let me share with you a story. It's a story that I included in The Power of Intention. It's a story that I want to share here with you today. It is one of the most beautiful, and it's a true story as well. It goes like this. I call it the Shia story. In Brooklyn, New York, this is titled, Where is God's Perfection? In Brooklyn, New York, CHUSH, C-H-U-S-H, CHUSH is a school that caters to learning disabled children. Some children remain in CHUSH for their entire school career, while others can be mainstreamed into conventional schools. At a CHUSH fundraising event, a dinner, the father of a CHUSH child delivered a speech that would never be forgotten by all who attended. After extolling the school and its dedicated staff, he cried out, "Where is the perfection in my son Shia? Everything God does is done with perfection, but my child cannot remember facts and figures as other children do. Where is God's perfection here?" The audience was shocked by the question and pained by the father's anguish and stilled by the piercing query. "I believe," the father answered, "that when God brings a child like Shia into the world, the perfection that he seeks is in the way people react to this child." He then told the following story about his son Shia. One afternoon, Shia and his father walked past a park where some boys Shia knew were playing baseball. Shia asked his father, "Do you think they'll let me play?" Shia's father knew that his son was not at all athletic and that most boys wouldn't even want him on their team, but Shia's father understood that if his son was chosen to play, it would give him a sense of belonging. And as you know, Maslow's highest level of consciousness on that pyramid is a feeling of belonging. And Shia never felt that way. Shaya's father approached one of the boys on the field and asked if Shaya could play. The boy looked around for some guidance from his teammates, and getting none, he took matters into his own hands, and he said, "Well, we're losing by 6 runs, and the game is in the 8th inning. I guess he can be on our team, and we'll try to put him up to bat in the 9th inning." Shaya's father was ecstatic as Shaya smiled broadly. Shaya was told to put on a glove and go out to play in center field. In the bottom of the 8th inning, Shaya's team scored a few runs, but they were still behind by 3. In the bottom of the 9th inning, Shaya's team scored again, and now with 2 outs and the bases loaded, Shaya was scheduled to be up with the potential winning run on base. Would the team actually let Shaya bat at this juncture of the game and give away the... Surprisingly, Shaya was given the bat. Everyone knew that it was all but impossible because Shaya didn't even know how to hold a bat, let alone hit with it. However, as Shaya stepped up to the plate, the pitcher moved in a few steps so he could lob the ball in softly so that Shaya would at least be able to make contact with the ball. The first pitch came in, Shaya swung clumsily and he missed. And then one of Shaya's teammates came up out of the dugout, and together he and Shaya held the bat and faced the opposing pitcher, waiting for the next pitch, the two of them. The pitcher again took in a few more steps toward Shaya so he could toss the ball even more softly. And as the pitch came in, Shaya and his teammate together swung the bat, and together they hit a slow ground ball to the pitcher. The pitcher picked up the soft grounder and could easily have thrown the ball to the first baseman. Shaya would have been out, and that would have ended the game. But instead, the pitcher took the ball and threw it on a high arc to right field, far beyond the reach of the first baseman. Everyone started yelling, "Shaya, Shaya, run to first, run to first, run to first." Never in his life had Shaya run to first. He scampered down the baseline, wide-eyed and startled. By the time he reached first base, the right fielder had the ball, and he could have thrown the ball to the second baseman, who would tag out Shaya, who was still running. But the right fielder understood what the pitcher's intentions were. So he threw the ball high and far over the third baseman's head. Everyone yelled, "Run to second, Shaya, run to second." Shaya ran toward second base as the runners ahead of him deliriously circled the bases toward home. As Shaya reached second base, the opposing shortstop ran up to him, turned him in the direction of third base, and shouted, "Run to third, Shaya, run to third." As Shaya rounded third, the boys from both teams ran behind him screaming, "Shaya, Shaya, run home, run home." Shaya ran home, stepped on home plate, and all 18 boys lifted him on their shoulders and made him the hero as he had just hit a grand slam and won the game for his team. That day, said his father, now with soft tears rolling down his face, those 18 boys reached their level of God's perfection. Is that a beautiful story? It always touches me.